Hi everyone, this is going to be, kind of a, review video about my personal experience and opinion about the game, Amnesia Rebirth. I do have a full series of Let's Play videos in my channel, so please check that out. And be warned that, this review video isn't exactly your typical review video. It's more, I don't know, I guess how to say it is, it's more like, it's unofficial, right? It's not like, kind of the review videos that you'll see on GameSpot channels or something like that. Really just my own opinion about the whole game overall, the packaging and the presentation and everything. And also be warned that there will be spoilers in this video. So if you're not cool with that, be warned and maybe you should stop the video now. But for those of you who are cool with spoilers, here we go. So the first thing I'd like to talk about in Amnesia Rebirth is the horror suspense, right? Ultimately most of the time when you're playing Amnesia or these kind of puzzle atmospheric games, you want to feel frightened or suspense or some kind of fear, right, invoked in you. And like most other suspense horror video games or even horror movies, eventually it gets to a point where you're just not scared anymore. Right, you're familiar with the atmosphere, you're familiar with the story, the monster. Eventually, the suspense feeling just dissipates, right? And for me personally, the point that I stopped feeling scared in this game or feeling the suspense was shortly after the fort. So if you watch my videos, that's roughly about the 3-hour mark. And now if you look at the entire, my entire Let's Play series, it's about 12 hours. So, 3 hours, kind of disappointing. 3 hours, not even halfway through the game yet. And I started, not feeling the horror and suspense anymore. So I kind of wish that, the writers or the developers could have, extended the time a little bit longer. Maybe, don't let me see, the face of the monsters. Delay that a little bit. But overall, I mean, it was done all right. It's not the best, but it was all right. And for me, I think the other point that I want to make is when they started presenting, the story, going with the direction, where there's kind of sort of a sci-fi theme to it, right? That again, it just kind of reinforces the idea that the game is, exploring, not just in a fantasy setting, which is kind of what, the prior games are about, right? The other Amnesia series. But, exploring into the more futuristic, sci-fi, outer worlds, then suddenly, that kind of filled up your expectation. Again, it's filling in the atmosphere of, what the game wants to present or push the story forward. And once you understand that, again, it just dropped the suspense feeling, greatly, right? And so the next thing I would like to talk about is the story. The story is important in all of these, puzzle, suspense, horror games because, again, once you get to the point where you're no longer scared of the game anymore or, feeling the suspense anymore, the story comes in and takes over, right? It is the final stretch is always the story that makes the player wants to play the rest of the game. Now, in terms of the story, I have to say it is kind of disappointing too, right? The problem I have with Amnesia Rebirth is they try to tell the story to you by dropping, broken pieces of information scattered throughout the game. Now, I'm not against the storytelling methods of breaking them into pieces and let the player piece them together in your head. But I think it's the pieces that were being presented. Okay, so for example, in our main character, Tassie, she woke up, from a train wreck, not remembering what happened, and as she starts to trace over her steps, she started, rediscovering what happened to the expedition team that she was going on, on this expedition with, of course. And throughout the entire, sequence, I only really get snippets of interactions between characters. right? Like, there was no character introduction, and even the so-called character introduction, you kind of just find these information card, you know, again, scattered out throughout the entire, you know, world and the map. And it was really hard for me to, you know, memorize all the characters. I think the expedition team has like, honestly, I can't even tell you, maybe like 10 people, 8 people, somewhere around that number. Like, names were fuzzy, right? I know there's a doctor, I know there's a min person, I know there's a hunter, but again, I cannot put the name to the face. Like, it's just an information card that, you know, gives you a quick, you know, 2 paragraphs background of the person. I have never interacted with these characters, you know, as, you know, playing through Tassie, of course. And, you know, it's just hard for me to have, you know, emotional attachments or memory recalling these other characters. And so that's how I felt, right? Throughout the entire game, it was just a bunch of information through text bombarded at you. You're being delivered through these, you know, texts, and it was hard for me to really connect with these expedition team members or connect with all the other characters in the story. And the same goes with the other civilization too. So again, for those of you who hasn't played the game, in the game there is one point where you basically exit Earth and enter into another dimension, right? Into a more advanced and futuristic civilization. And there, once again, they started dropping recordings at you. These tablets that has documented all these writings, what happened here, what happened, you know, what was the civilization trying to do, etc, etc. And again, like the lore drop, it was hard for me to care about the civilization, right? Like, okay, it's cool that I learned what they're trying to do. They're trying to capture people from other dimensions, torture them, you know, once they generate fear, that is their energy source. And then they power this entire city with this one single energy source. And then they went into more details about the medicine that they use, you know, how they advance their torturing device, and all of that good stuff. And while it is good, right, it gets the job done. We're able to understand what the civilization was trying to do. But again, I don't know if I care that much, right? I would put it another way. Let's just say I'm reading lore in another video game. What's a big franchise? Let's say Final Fantasy, right? Let's say I'm reading lores about a particular Final Fantasy VII game. Final Fantasy, sorry, or any Final Fantasy VII in the series, that's what I mean. And, you know, I would only be interested in reading the lore about the place, about the people, if I'm already emotionally invested in the game, in the characters, and in the story. But if you're dropping lores on me in a particular topic that I don't feel emotionally attached to or care about at all, I mean, it's not that interesting, right? It eventually just loses my interest. So overall, what I'm gonna say about the story is, it's not bad. It got the point across. You know, we kind of understood what happened. You know, although I have note that, you know, the writer, I know they purposely try to, you know, hide some information from the player, so then, you know, some of the storyline is up for discussion. Holy jeez, hold on, let me just turn down the music here for a second, guys. Suddenly turned into a battle theme here. Anyhow, but sorry, I kind of lost my chain of thought here. But going back is, yeah, the story-wise, it's, I wish I can do a little bit better, right? I wish I can, you know, before the plane crash, for example, maybe I can interact a little bit more with the expedition team, right? Like, who's who, what am I doing here? Quite frankly, I'm still not quite sure what the expedition team is doing in Africa, right? To be honest with you. Maybe it did tell me in one of those nuggets of information, but honestly, I didn't care about enough to remember it. So, I kind of wish there was a bit more introduction, right? You know, interacting with the expedition team, the civilization, I kind of wish they focus on one character, maybe, right? Maybe have a character that I kind of care more. I want to know about what happened to this particular person, why are they going through, why is the civilization going through what they're going through, right? I kind of wish there was a bit more emotional attachment into it, than just dropping, nuggets of writings down all over the world and have me piece it together. Sorry, I guess I have no problem with it piecing it together in my head, again, but I just feel like it could have been written better and have a better emotional attachment with the characters and the story. And overall, those are the two biggest things. I'll mention a few other small things here. One, there is this thing called what I would call the baby mechanic. What the baby mechanic is whenever we're, solving puzzles or roaming around looking at monsters, there are points in time where I have to press, X on the keyboard to check on the baby, right? Again, spoiler alert, but Tassie is pregnant, so, at certain points you have to go check the baby, and I assume there is some sort of meter that I'm not being able to see. And at a certain point, Tassie gets scared or the baby gets scared and I have to check on it. And I felt like that mechanic was a little bit random, right? Like, so for example, at one point in the game, I was trying to solve a puzzle and nothing was happening. Like, literally, I was just, pressing buttons, rotating pillars around, and in the middle of just rotating these pillars, guess what? The game told me to check on the baby. And again, like, I wasn't really quite sure what the objective is or what the point is, right? Maybe the point or what the developers are trying to do is making us be aware that, hey, you are role-playing as Tassie and she is pregnant. And now I get that. I would get that if that was the objective, but I would say maybe leave the baby mechanics out of the actual game. Like, there is a lot of good mechanics already, right? You got the sanity meter, right? If you're in the dark for too long, or if you're looking at the monster directly for too long, you already got the sanity meter. You already got the, the match mechanics where you have to go around and light up torches already. You have limited oil lamps or whatever. So, in my opinion, I think those mechanics are suffice, right? Like, I feel like the baby mechanics, not really quite sure why it was there. And another thing I can suggest is, like, I would say maybe have a hint system. Right? I'll be honest. I think there's 2 points in throughout this game that I just got stuck. Now, given one time I got stuck because I was freaking blind, right? There was a ladder and I didn't see it, and I was like searching all over the map trying to find this ladder. I had to go on YouTube and check out some other videos and see where I'm supposed to go. But yeah, like, I think that having a hint system would be interesting, will be good, and I feel like a lot of puzzle games don't have this hint system enough, right? For example, right, a lot of people who play puzzle games, I'm sure if you get stuck and you get frustrated, people are just going to go online and just look up for the solution. If that's the case, why not make a hint system where, you kind of make the player feel better, right? Like, hey, you know what? The hint system can just nudge you to the right direction. That way, you can still solve it in a way within the premise of the game. And the last thing here I'll mention is this is more like a story side of things. Is I kind of wish that they used the Traveler's Compass a little bit more. Alright, so in the story, what happened was Tassie mysteriously has this little bracelet, this little mechanism on her wrist called the Traveler's Compass, and you can, like, take out the compass, look at particular points where there's rift, and you can enter and exit between, the regular world and the other realm, right? The other civilization world. And I thought that was a pretty cool idea, right? But now I'm not sure, maybe the developer didn't think it was a good idea, or maybe a developer had a completely different direction. But that whole rift mechanic only lasted for about the first 2 hours of the game. Alright, it shows up a few more times in the rest of the game, but you know, it wasn't what I expected. Right? I honestly thought it was gonna be so cool where, you know, you're gonna be interchanging between worlds, right? Hopping in and out, getting pieces here and there, and trying to, like, you know, have this giant, you know, space that you can connect between the other civilization and the real world, and it'll make this giant puzzle. And I thought that would be such a, you know, cool idea, cool concept. Or if not, just at least use that compass a little bit more, right? Like, there was such huge emphasis on this traveler's compass, and yet it's just kind of like fit into the story for the first hour or two. I don't know, that was kind of disappointing. I was kind of hoping that there was more to it, using the traveler's compass. So overall, I mean, like, the game's alright, right? Like, so far I haven't really faced any big bugs. Oh, actually, one more thing I'll mention here before I come to my conclusion. The monsters in this game spawns randomly, right? So what I mean is, if you die as Tassie, and when you're trying to walk down the same corridor or the same area, the monster will not show up in the exact same spot, right? They have this kind of RNG, you know, spawning mechanism. Now, it's great because, you know, from what I understand, you know, an RNG monster system, a spawning system, does create a bit more suspense, which is great. But there was one scene where I think, you know, the game specifically wants me to do a set of actions. You know, well, first I have to lock the monsters in the room, lock the monster in the room first, and then do a specific action. Basically, I screwed up, right? The monster came out of the room, and I don't know what to do with it afterwards. Like, the monster won't respawn back into the room, allowing me to do what the developer intended me to do. And I forgot exactly how I, you know, go around that problem. I believe I baited him, like, you know, heck far away, and then just resume what I was supposed to do in the game. So what I would say about that is, like, good idea, but I felt like the implementation could be a little bit better. You know, if there's a particular part in the story or the game where you want the player to do exactly what you want, maybe don't use the RNG spawning system. Anyhow, so in conclusion, I mean, the game is, you know, it's not bad. Like, I haven't experienced any, you know, game stopper bugs. You know, graphics was pretty good. There's no, you know, graphics clipping, whatnot. Everything seems to function fine. But again, in terms of the artistic side of it, you know, again, I kind of wish that the suspense lasted a little bit longer. And I think it would do better if, again, if they don't show, you know, the physical feature of the monster so early, if they maybe they don't reveal to me the civilization so early in the game, maybe they make their chase scenes a little bit more exciting. Yeah, and overall, I just feel, you know, I feel like they could improve on that part, right? Both in terms of the suspense and the story. So if I was to give it a score, you know, I'm gonna say 6.5. All right, I'm gonna give this game a 6.5 out of 10, and no, and that's it. Like, I guess there's nothing more to say. But I'm still hoping that this developer, you know, continue creating good games, because I know they have a lot of potential. You know, that's it. Thank you, guys.